The restaurant's private dining room felt suffocating, despite its high ceilings and elegant decor. My father's 60th birthday celebration was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking as relatives shared stories about his successful law career. I sat quietly at the corner of the long table, picking at my overpriced steak, trying to become invisible, a skill I perfected over the years. "And here's to my daughter Emma," Dad announced, raising his glass. Recently made partner at Anderson & Mitchell, following in her old man's footsteps. My sister stood up, basking in the approval that radiated from every corner of the room. Her designer dress probably cost more than what most people thought I made in a month. She'd always been the golden child, the one who did everything right: prestigious law school, perfect marriage, right connections. "Thanks, Daddy," she beamed. "I learned from the best." I took another sip of wine, remembering all the times I'd heard, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Growing up, every decision I made that didn't align with their planned path was met with disappointment. Engineering school instead of law school. Starting my own tech company instead of joining a firm. Living modestly instead of flaunting wealth. And then there's Sophie, my mother added with a tight smile. "Still doing her. What do you call it, dear?" "Computer thing." "Artificial intelligence development," I corrected quietly. "My company specializes in AI solutions for." Yes, Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Playing with computers." At least one of my children understood the value of a real career. The familiar sting of his words burned, but I forced myself to maintain a neutral expression. If only they knew that my computer thing had revolutionized multiple industries. That the modest office they mocked as a hobby shop was just a front for my real operations. "Did you hear about Emma's new house in the Hamptons?" Mom gushed to anyone who would listen. 5 bedrooms, private beach access. "It's nothing really," Emma said with false modesty. "Just a little weekend getaway. Though Sophie, if you ever need a break from your startup, you're welcome to visit. When we're not there, of course." More polite laughter. I thought about my own properties: the penthouse in Manhattan, the villa in Tuscany, a private island in the Pacific. All carefully hidden under various LLC names, their ownership obscured by layers of corporate privacy protection. A toast, my Uncle Robert stood up, glass in hand. "To James Morrison, who raised one hell of a successful daughter." "And Sophie," my aunt added, clearly feeling obligated. "She's trying her best." I watched my father's face. There it was, that slight grimace he always got when someone mentioned me. As if my very existence was a disappointment he had to endure. "Well," he said, straightening his tie, "at least one of my children isn't a disappointment." Emma understood what it means to build a real career, to create a legacy. She's made the Morrison name mean something in the legal world. The room fell awkwardly silent. Even by his standards, this was harsh. "James," my mother whispered, "maybe that's a bit." "No, Margaret, it needs to be said." He turned to face me directly. "Sophie, you had every advantage. The best schools, every opportunity. And what do you do? Waste it all playing entrepreneur in some tiny office downtown. Do you know what people say? They ask me what went wrong with my other daughter." I set down my wine glass, the crystal making a soft clink against the tablecloth. "What went wrong?" My voice was quieter than I intended, but it carried across the sudden silence. "Yes, what went wrong? While your sister is closing multi-million-dollar deals, you're what? Writing computer code in a basement?" I thought about the contract sitting on my desk back at the office, about the revolutionary AI system my company had developed, the one that was about to transform global finance. About the acquisition offers from tech giants that I'd turned down because the numbers, 9 figures each, weren't high enough. "Dad," Emma said, trying to play peacemaker, "Sophie's doing fine. I mean, she's independent at least. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real corporate success." That was Emma, always managing to sound supportive while twisting the knife deeper. "Independent?" Dad scoffed. "Is that what we're calling failure now? When I was her age, I was already making waves in the legal world. Your sister was already on track to partner. But Sophie? She's 35 with nothing to show for it except some delusional dream of being the next Steve Jobs." I pulled out my phone, fingers hovering over the banking app. For years, I kept my success hidden, partly because I enjoyed my privacy, partly because I was waiting for the right moment. Watching my father pontificate about success while my sister smirked, I realized. This was that moment. You want to talk about success, Dad? I opened the app, navigating to my main account. About legacy, about what the Morrison name means. Suffy, my mother warned, don't make a scene, it's your father's birthday. Yes, it is. I stood up slowly, and I think it's time he got his gift, the truth. We don't need another one of your homemade computer programs, Emma said with a condescending smile, though I'm sure it's very creative. I turned my phone around, displaying the screen for everyone to see. My account balance glowed clearly, $47,282,465.19, and that was just one of my accounts. The room went completely still. I heard a glass shatter somewhere to my left. My father's voice cracked. That's impossible. Is it? I pulled up another screen, my company's latest valuation report. Morrison Technologies, you probably know it better as MT Solutions, the AI company that's been making headlines for revolutionizing financial technology, currently valued at just over $4 billion. Emma's perfectly maintained composure cracked. MT Solutions, but they're the ones who just turned down acquisition offers from Google and Microsoft. Turned them down because they were insultingly low. I smiled, enjoying a way my father's face had lost all color. Would you like to see those offers, Dad? They're quite impressive, though not as impressive as what your failure daughter has built on her own. You're lying, he stammered. This is some kind of trick. I pulled up the company's public filings. Check for yourself. Though you won't find my name easily, I value my privacy. The same privacy that let me build an empire while you were all too busy mocking my computer thing to notice. My mother had sunk into her chair, her social smile completely gone. Emma was frantically Googling on her phone, her hands shaking slightly as headlines about MT Solutions filled her screen. $4 billion, I continued calmly. That's what your disappointment daughter's company is worth. That tiny office downtown, it's just for show. Our real headquarters takes up 3 floors in the Sterling Tower. You know, that building Emma keeps bragging about wanting to get her firm into. I own it. The silence was absolute now. Every relative who had smirked at my supposed failure sat frozen, glasses halfway to their lips. But why didn't you tell us? My mother finally managed. Tell you? I laughed softly. When have you ever wanted to hear about my work? When have any of you shown even the slightest interest in understanding what I do? I turned to my father, whose birthday celebration had taken a turn he never expected. You wanted to talk about legacy, Dad. About making the Morrison name mean something. Well, in the tech world, in the real centers of power and innovation, Morrison means something. Just not because of you. The aftermath of my revelation was exactly what you'd expect from a family that had based their entire hierarchy on perceived success. The expensive wine sat forgotten, condensation beating on crystal glasses as everyone tried to process what they just learned. Emma recovered first, her legal training kicking in. MT Solutions. They're the ones who developed that AI trading system. The one that's being implemented by major banks worldwide. She looked at me with new eyes, reassessing everything she thought she knew about her little sister. Among other things, I said, taking my seat again. Our healthcare and division is quite promising too. We're revolutionizing diagnostic procedures in ways that will save millions of lives. But my father was still struggling to form complete sentences. The Sterling Tower. That's a $300 million property. Was a $300 million property, I corrected. Worth considerably more now after the renovations. Would you like to see the deed? My mother's social instincts finally kicked in. She reached for my hand across the table, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Darling, this is wonderful. Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped, made introductions. I pulled my hand away. Made introductions? Like when you told the Hamiltons not to waste their time investing in my hobby? Or when Dad warned his clients to stay away from my amateur operation? The color drained from her face as she remembered. 3 years ago, the Hamiltons had been interested in early-stage investment. My parents had convinced them I wasn't worth the risk. We were trying to protect them, my father defended weakly, and you from inevitable failure. Protect them? I laughed. Those who did invest in my inevitable failure saw their investment multiply by 800% in 18 months. The Hamiltons recently tried to buy shares at current market value. I turned them down. Uncle Robert leaned forward, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by keen interest. Sophie, about my son's tech startup. No, I cut him off firmly. I'm not interested in investment opportunities from family. Not anymore. But we're family, Emma protested. Surely that counts for something. I turned to her, remembering all the times she lorded her success over me. Does it? Like when you convinced the partners at Anderson and Mitchum not to consider my company's software proposal. Looking out for their best interests, I believe you called it. She had the grace to look embarrassed. That proposal, rejected due to her interference, had gone to their competitors instead. The same competitors who were now dominating the legal tech sector using my company's systems. I didn't know, she whispered. No, you didn't. None of you knew because none of you cared to know. I stood up again, dropping my napkin on the table. You were also convinced you knew what success looked like. A corner office, a partnership, a house in the Hamptons. You never considered that real innovation, real world-changing success, might look different. Sit down, my father commanded, finding his authoritative voice again. We need to discuss this as a family. Your company, these opportunities. Opportunities? I raised an eyebrow. You mean now that you know I'm worth billions, suddenly my computer thing is worth discussing? Don't be difficult, Sophie, my mother pleaded. Your father's just trying to understand. We all are. It's a lot to take in. I looked around the table at my assembled family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all who had spent years pitying poor Sophie while praising Emma's conventional success. Now they stared at me with naked calculation in their eyes, mentally revising every interaction we ever had. You know what the funny thing is? I said, picking up my purse. I used to dream about this moment, about showing you all what I built, proving you wrong. But standing here now, I realize something. Your approval stopped mattering a long time ago. Sophie, please. Emma stood up. Let's talk about this. Maybe there are synergies between our firms. Synergies? I couldn't help but laugh. You mean now that you know who I am, you want to explore business opportunities? What happened to my amateur operation? My father pushed his chair back abruptly. Enough. I won't have you ruining my birthday with this spectacle. If you've built something successful, good for you. But your attitude. My attitude. I cut him off, my voice sharp. You mean like your attitude 5 minutes ago when you called me a failure in front of our entire family? Or your attitude the past 7 years when you couldn't even be bothered to visit my office? He fell silent, and in that silence, I saw something I'd never seen before. Uncertainty. For the first time in my life, my father wasn't sure he was right. I pulled an envelope from my purse and placed it on the table. Happy birthday, Dad. Inside you'll find something interesting. The deed to your law firm's building. MT Solutions bought it last month through a subsidiary. Consider this notice. Your rent is doubling next quarter. Market rates, you understand. The room erupted in chaos. My mother gasped. Emma started frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to verify what I just said. My father just stared at the envelope like it might bite him. You can't do this, he finally managed. Actually, I can. Just good business sense. Isn't that what you always taught me? I smiled. Don't worry, I'm not being vindictive. You're welcome to stay, at the new rate, or you can move to one of the many other buildings in the city. Though I paused for effect, you might want to check who owns those first. I turned to leave, but Emma caught my arm. Wait. At least let me take you to lunch next week. To talk about things, sister to sister. I gently removed her hand. I'm afraid I'm busy next week. I'm finalizing the acquisition of Anderson and Mitchell's largest client. You know, the one whose AI contract you convinced them to reject. I washed her face pale. Don't worry, I'm sure the partners will understand. After all, it's just business. Sophie, my mother called out as I reached the door. What do you want from us? I paused, considering the question. For years, what I wanted was your approval, your understanding, your support. Now, I don't want anything from you. That's the beauty of success. It shows you what really matters and what doesn't. As I walked out of the private dining room, I heard the chaos erupting behind me. My phone started buzzing immediately. First Emma, then my mother. Then a stream of messages from relatives who suddenly remembered my existence. I stepped into my waiting car, nodding to James, my driver. "The office, please. Everything okay, Ms. Morrison?" he asked, noting my expression in the rearview mirror. "Better than okay," I replied, watching the restaurant disappear behind us. Just finished giving my father his birthday gift, the truth. Back at my real office, the top floor of Sterling Tower with its sweeping city views. I sat at my desk and finally looked at the messages flooding my phone. "Mom, please call us. We need to talk about this as a family." "Emma, this is crazy. Let me explain about Anderson and Mitchell." "Dad, your behavior tonight was unacceptable. Call me immediately." "Uncle Robert, about that startup investment." I deleted them all and opened my email, where my team had sent the latest acquisition reports. MT Solutions was about to announce another technological breakthrough, one that would reshape the industry yet again. My net worth would likely double by year's end. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. My assistant Sarah entered with a concerned look. "Your sister Emma is in the lobby. Says she won't leave until you see her." I glanced at the security feed on my computer. There she was, still in her designer dress from dinner, looking decidedly less polished now. "Tell her my schedule is full," I said, turning back to my work. "But she's welcome to make an appointment, through proper channels, of course." Sarah nodded and left. On my screen, I watched Emma receive the message, saw her face contour in frustration before she finally left. Looking out over the city skyline, I thought about success and failure, about approval and validation. For years, I'd let their narrow definition of success make me feel small. Now I realized true success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I opened my phone one last time and sent a single group text to my family. "Thank you for teaching me that failure is in the eye of the beholder. Rest assured, your rent increase is nothing personal, just good business sense, like you always taught me. By the way, Emma, your firm's biggest client, sends their regards. They're very excited about implementing MT Solutions' new legal AI platform through your competitors." Then I turned off my phone, picked up the latest project proposal, and got back to work. After all, empires aren't built by waiting for family approval. They're built by those willing to be underestimated. And I had been underestimated for the very last time.
The Richardson Hotel's grand entrance loomed before me, its marble columns decked with twinkling Christmas lights. 5 years ago I would have felt small walking through those gilded doors. Now I owned shares in the hotel chain. Not that my parents knew that. I checked my phone one last time. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 messages insisting I review the proper etiquette for tonight's Christmas party. The latest one still made my blood boil. "Sarah, please don't embarrass us again like last year. These are important people. Wear something appropriate, not those cheap department store clothes. And for heaven's sake, stop talking about your little internet project. Nobody wants to hear about that." Little internet project. I laughed, sliding my phone into my Hermes handbag. The same brand Mom flaunted at every opportunity, though mine wasn't a knockoff like hers. My little project had just closed its 4th acquisition this year, bringing Apex Digital Solutions' valuation to $2.8 billion. Last week alone, we'd signed contracts worth over $100 million. But my parents didn't know any of that. They still thought I was struggling with a small web design business from my tiny penthouse apartment. I'd kept my success hidden, operating through holding companies and subsidiaries, my name carefully obscured in all public documents. Not out of shame, but because I wanted to succeed without their interference. And maybe, just maybe, I was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal everything. The elevator ride to the ballroom gave me time to recall the journey that led here. 4 years ago, I sat in my parents' living room trying to explain my business plan. A digital transformation company? Dad had scoffed, not even looking up from his newspaper. "That's not a real business, Sarah. Real businesses have offices and employees, not some computer program you coded in your bedroom." Mom had chimed in. "Honey, why not take that job at your father's friend's company? Assistant manager isn't glamorous, but it's stable. You're already 26. You can't keep chasing these fantasies." I'd walked out that day determined to prove them wrong. The first year was brutal. Sleeping on a friend's couch, coding until my eyes burned, pitching to investors who saw only a young woman with unrealistic dreams. But I had something my parents never understood: vision. While they were stuck in their old-school business mentality, I saw the future. Companies desperately needed digital transformation, but existing solutions were clunky, expensive, and outdated. My platform changed that, offering scalable AI-driven solutions that could adapt to any business size. The first major client came 6 months in, a medium-sized retail chain needing to overhaul their entire digital infrastructure. I delivered in half the time and under budget. Word spread. More clients followed. By year 2 I had 30 employees. Year 3 we crossed 100 million in revenue. Now tech giants were trying to buy us out. The elevator doors opened to holiday music and chattering voices. The ballrooms sparkled with Christmas decorations, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over Seattle's business elite. I spotted my parents immediately, Mom in her red designer dress. Last season's collection, I noted. Dad commanding attention from a small group of men, probably repeating his tired stories about old-school business wisdom. Sarah. Mom's voice carried across the room, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She hurried over, pearls bouncing against her neck. You're late. And, oh, is that what you're wearing? I smoothed my hand over my custom-tailored Chanel suit. Hello, Mom. Yes, this is what I'm wearing. It's just so severe. How did you even afford? She shook her head, lowering her voice. Never mind. Listen, Mr. Maxwell from Maxwell Industries is coming tonight. Your father's been working on this deal for months. Please don't mention your computer things. If anyone asks, you're in business development. Dad joined us, already looking disappointed. Sarah, you could have at least worn some jewelry. First impressions matter in real business. He emphasized real like he always did when discussing my work. How's the website business? He asked, not waiting for an answer. Thompson's son just made junior partner at his firm. He was asking about you, you know. Never too late to consider a proper career. I bit back a smile, remembering how Thompson's son had pitched his struggling law firm to Apex last month, unaware he was presenting to my company. We'd passed. Their digital infrastructure was too outdated for what we needed. I'm doing fine, Dad, I said, accepting a glass of water from a passing waiter. How's the Maxwell deal going? His chest puffed up. Almost closed. Biggest client of the year for the firm. They need a complete overhaul of their operations, modernization, digital infrastructure. He trailed off, frowning. Not that you'd understand all that. If he only knew that Maxwell Industries had already signed with Apex Digital last week. A $50 million contract that would transform their entire company. I'd led the negotiations myself. The ballroom was filling up now. I recognized most faces, CEOs, investors, board members. Half of them had either worked with my company or tried to acquire it. None knew my connection to my parents, and I'd kept it that way deliberately. Oh God, he's here. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Richard, Mr. Maxwell just arrived. I turned to watch James Maxwell enter with his entourage. He was younger than most CEOs, forward-thinking, exactly why he'd chosen Apex Digital over traditional consulting firms. My parents rushed to greet him, all practiced smiles and rehearsed pleasantries. I stayed back watching. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, though they didn't know it yet. Mr. Maxwell. Mom's voice dripped honey. We're so honored you could join us. James smiled politely, shaking their hands. Then his eyes scanned the room and landed on me. His face lit up with recognition. Sarah, he called out, walking past my startled parents. Great to see you again, Chief Executive. That proposal you presented last week was brilliant. The board couldn't stop talking about it. The sound of shattering glass punctuated the sudden silence. Dad's champagne flute lay in pieces at his feet, the expensive liquor seeping into his Italian leather shoes. Mom's face had transformed into a mask of confusion and disbelief. Chief Executive, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The moment I'd imagined for years was finally here, and it was better than any scenario I'd rehearsed in my head. James continued enthusiastically, Everyone, you won't believe how lucky we are to have Apex Digital Solutions handling our digital transformation. Sarah here is absolutely revolutionary in her approach. The way she's built this company from the ground up into a billion-dollar enterprise. It's unprecedented in the industry. The silence that followed was deafening. Nearby conversations stopped. All eyes turned to us. Mom's perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock. Dad's face had gone from red to white to red again. I took a slow sip of my water, savoring every second of their realization. The truth was finally out, but this was just the beginning. The real storm was about to hit. The next few moments unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while Mom's perfectly manicured hand clutched her chest, her other frantically reaching for the nearest chair for support. There must be some mistake, Dad finally managed, his voice trembling. Our Sarah, she runs a small website business from her apartment. She's not. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years, and I watched the realization slowly dawn in his eyes. James Maxwell, still oblivious to the family drama unfolding, continued enthusiastically. Apex Digital Solutions is revolutionizing the entire tech industry. Sarah, your latest AI integration platform is absolutely brilliant. The demo you showed us last week. I've never seen anything like it. More people were gathering around now, drawn by the commotion. I recognized Janet Chin, CEO of Pacific Northwest Banking, who tried to acquire my company last year for $1.5 billion. She stepped forward, smiling warmly. Sarah, darling, I didn't know you'd be here. Still won't reconsider my offer. She laughed, then turned to my shell-shocked parents. You must be so proud. Your daughter's company is the talk of Silicon Valley. The way she turned down that $2 billion offer from tech giants last month. Absolutely legendary. Mom's knees finally gave out and she sank into the chair behind her. $2 billion, she whispered. I could see the memories flooding back in their eyes. Every dismissive comment, every belittling remark, every concerned lecture about getting a real job. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of purple as he remembered his words from last Thanksgiving. No one will ever take you seriously in the business world, Sarah. You're just embarrassing yourself. The crowd around us grew larger. More familiar faces appeared, clients, competitors, investors. Each one had a story about working with me, each revelation another blow to my parents' crumbling worldview. Sarah's company handled our entire digital transformation last year, announced Michael Robertson, CEO of Western Medical Group. Increased our efficiency by 300%. Best investment we've ever made. Remember that charity gala last month? Elizabeth Warner, the tech journalist, chimed in. Sarah's anonymous donation of $10 million to the Children's Technology Education Fund? Finally, we can reveal who our mysterious benefactor was. Dad's tie suddenly seemed too tight as he tugged at it desperately. I could almost see the calculations running through his head. All those times he'd lectured me about financial responsibility while I was quietly building an empire. But your apartment, Mom stammered, grasping at straws. That tiny place. Oh, you mean my office? I smiled. The penthouse apartment is just where I take meetings sometimes. I actually own the building. And the one next to it. And most of this block, actually. The hotel manager chose that moment to hurry over, bowing slightly. Ms. Anderson, is everything all right? Should we open the private dining room for your party? The one you purchased last year. Mom's expensive mascara was starting to run as tears formed in her eyes. Last year, when you said you couldn't afford to contribute to the family vacation. I was a bit busy, I replied calmly, acquiring our biggest competitor and expanding into the European market. The memories seemed to hit them in waves. Dad's face contorted as he remembered every time he'd bragged about his friends' children and their successful corporate jobs. Mom's hands shook as she recalled all the times she tried to set me up with successful men who could take care of me. James Maxwell raised his glass. A toast. To Sarah Anderson, the youngest CEO to make the Fortune 500 list this year. The woman who's redefining digital transformation and showing us old guards how it's done. The room erupted in applause. Glasses clinked. Camera phones appeared. Tomorrow this would be all over the business news. The revelation of the mysterious CEO behind Apex Digital Solutions. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to my parents, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room. Mom, Dad, remember last month when your firm was struggling with that pension fund issue? The anonymous investor who stepped in to save the company. I paused, letting it sink in. You're welcome. Dad's knees buckled. A waiter rushed forward with a chair just in time to catch him. All this time, he muttered, all those lectures about business, and you? We're building something bigger than you could imagine. I finished for him. Yes. And that's not even the best part. I nodded to James Maxwell, who grinned and pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Shall we tell them about the merger? The color drained from my parents' faces as they realized what was coming. The room leaned in, eager to hear the news that would reshape the industry. You see, I continued, my voice steady and clear, Maxwell Industries isn't just becoming our client. As of next week, they're becoming part of Apex Digital Solutions. And with them, I paused, looking directly at my father, comes their controlling interest in Anderson and Partners, your firm. The gasps were audible. Dad's law firm, his pride and joy, the business he'd built over 30 years, was about to become a subsidiary of my company. Which means, I smiled, watching the final piece of their world collapse. Starting Monday, I'm not just your daughter anymore. I'm your boss. The silence that followed was absolute. In the distance, a Christmas carol played ironically about joy and peace. I took another sip of my water, wondering if they were finally ready to have a real conversation about business. The next hour passed in a blur of congratulations, business cards, and not-so-subtle acquisition offers. My parents remained frozen in their chairs, looking like elaborate Christmas decorations that had short-circuited. The party continued around them, but they were trapped in their own private nightmare, or perhaps finally waking up from one. As the crowd thinned, I made my way to their table. The distance felt symbolic, 5 steps that represented 5 years of struggle, determination, and silent triumph. Should we talk? I asked quietly, pulling up a chair. Mom's mascara had created abstract art on her cheeks. Dad's tie hung loose around his neck, his carefully cultivated image of success now as rumpled as his collar. Why didn't you tell us? Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell you? Like when I tried to tell you about my first major contract, and you interrupted to talk about Mrs. Henderson's son who just made junior partner. Or when I attempted to explain my AI platform, and Dad said I was playing with computers while real business people were working. We were trying to protect you, Dad protested weakly. The business world is harsh. Protect me. I leaned forward. Let me tell you about protection, Dad. Remember Marcus Williams, your golf buddy? He tried to hostile take over my company last year. Called me little girl in the boardroom. Want to know what happened to his company? Dad's face paled further. Williams' company had mysteriously lost all its major contracts and was now facing bankruptcy. Or how about the Stevens Group? When they tried to steal our encryption technology. I continued. They don't exist anymore. I bought them for pennies on the dollar and redistributed their assets. That was you. Dad's voice cracked. But that was $1 billion deal. Actually, that was just a minor acquisition. Last quarter's small print. I sipped my water. While you were telling everyone I was finding myself, with my little computer hobby, I was building an empire. Every time you bragged about someone else's child's success, I was closing deals bigger than their entire careers. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her purse. The charity gala. The children's hospital wing we couldn't afford to donate to. The Sarah Anderson Technology Center? I smiled. Yes, that was me. Anonymous donations are interesting things, aren't they? But why keep it secret? Dad demanded, a flash of his old authority returning. Why let us think? Think what, Dad? That I was a failure? That I needed your guidance? Your connections? I set my glass down carefully. I wanted to succeed on my own terms. No family name, no connections, no advantages. Just pure merit. And look what happened. I didn't just succeed, I revolutionized an entire industry. The weight of reality seemed to crush them further into their seats. Every dismissive comment, every condescending piece of advice, every missed opportunity to simply listen to their daughter. It all came crashing down. The merger announcement goes public Monday. I continued, my voice professional now. Your firm will undergo a complete digital transformation. We'll be streamlining operations, modernizing systems. I paused, letting them hear their own words echoed back. All those things you said I wouldn't understand. What happens to us? Dad asked, looking older than I'd ever seen him. That depends, I replied. I'm offering you both a choice. Option 1. Early retirement, generous packages, all benefits maintained. You can play golf, travel, do whatever you've always wanted. Option 2, stay on but understand that things will change. Dramatically. You'll report to people half your age who understand the future we're building. You'll need to learn, adapt, evolve. You're not leadership material, Mom scoffed, adjusting her executive vice president nameplate on her desk at Global Tech Industries. Leadership requires presence, authority, strategic thinking, not hiding behind computer screens all day. I stood in her corner office, my latest proposal for AI integration clutched in my hands. The irony of being lectured about leadership by someone who still used a BlackBerry in 2025 wasn't lost on me. The AI division I built has the highest profit margins in the company, I replied calmly. We've automated processes that were bleeding money for decades. Playing with computers isn't leadership, Sarah, Dad chimed in from his CFO chair. Real leaders are out there making deals, commanding rooms. Like your sister Jessica. Now there's executive material. Yes, Jessica. The golden child. Senior VP of Sales at 35, already being groomed for higher positions. Never mind that her division's growth was largely driven by the AI tools I developed. The Thompson meeting starts in 10 minutes, Mom's assistant called through the intercom. They're waiting in the main conference room. We'll finish this discussion later, Mom stood, straightening her power suit. Though honestly, Sarah, these constant proposals for advancement, maybe it's time to accept that some people are meant to be support staff. Support staff. At 32 with 2 master's degrees from MIT and a track record of successful innovations, I was still just support staff to them. Actually, I said, gathering my things, I won't be here later. I have a meeting across town. Another tech seminar? Dad asked dismissively. Or one of those coding workshops you're always running off to? I smiled, thinking about the real nature of my meeting. Something like that. Walking through Global Tech's offices, I passed Jessica holding court with her sales team, their laughter echoing through the halls. She saw me and waved condescendingly. Hey sis. Still trying to convince Mom about that robot thing. AI integration. I corrected automatically. And no, I'm done trying to convince anyone here of anything. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Chin, my contact at Victoria Corp, the largest tech conglomerate in the sector. Board meeting confirmed. Everything's set. 6 months of secret negotiations, careful planning, and strategic moves were about to pay off. But my family didn't know that. They didn't know a lot of things about their support staff daughter. They didn't know that while they were dismissing my computer games, I was building one of the most sophisticated AI systems in the industry. They didn't know that their star clients, the ones Jessica claimed as her sales victories, were actually staying because of my technology. And they certainly didn't know about tomorrow's industry conference announcement. In my own office, a cramped space deliberately positioned far from the executive floor, I checked my presentation one last time. Tomorrow at the annual Tech Leadership Summit, everything would change. My phone buzzed again. Your new office is ready. Corner suite, 47th floor. The view is spectacular. I looked around my current space with its outdated furniture and single window overlooking the parking lot. Mom had put me here 3 years ago, saying I needed to earn my way up. Well, I had earned it. Just not the way they expected. Another message came through. Press release is prepared. Embargo lifts at 10 a.m. tomorrow, right after the announcement. I sent a quick reply. Perfect. Make sure Global Tech's executive team has front row seats at the conference. I want them to have the best view possible. Standing up, I took one last look at my small office. By this time tomorrow, I'd be sitting in a very different space making very different decisions. My assistant, one of the few people who knew what was coming, poked her head in. Car's ready for your meeting, Ms. Chin. And your family's secretary just sent the conference schedule. They're all confirmed for tomorrow's session. Thank you, Rachel. Make sure everything's packed and ready for tomorrow's move. He grinned. Already done. I can't wait to see their faces when they what? Jessica's voice cut in as she appeared in my doorway. Are you finally getting that promotion to middle management you've been hoping for? I shouldered my bag containing the contracts that would reshape our entire industry. Something like that, Jess. See you at the conference tomorrow. Front row, she smirked. With the other executives. You'll be somewhere in the back with the tech team, I assume. Oh, I'll be there, I replied. Exactly where I belong. The Victoria Corp boardroom buzzed with anticipation. 30 of the most powerful people in tech sat around a massive table, all eyes focused on me as I finished my presentation. With the integration of Global Tech's AI division, which to be clear means my team and my technology, Victoria Corp will control 60% of the market, I concluded, watching the stock projections dance across the wall screens. Marcus Chin, Victoria's CEO, leaned forward. And you're certain your family has no idea? They think I'm at a coding workshop, I laughed. They've been so busy dismissing me, they never noticed who actually owns Global Tech's AI patents. The truth was delicious in its simplicity. Every innovation, every algorithm, every piece of code that had kept Global Tech competitive over the last 5 years. I'd registered them all in my own name, not the company's. A detail buried in contracts they'd signed without reading, too confident in their assumption that their support staff daughter wouldn't understand legal complexities. The papers are ready, Victoria's legal head announced. Once the announcement is made tomorrow, the transition begins immediately. I signed the final documents, each signature taking me further from the shadow of my family's condescension. My new business cards arrived. Sarah Chen, CEO of Advanced Technologies Division, Victoria Corporation. Your parents are going to be surprised, Marcus commented as we wrapped up. Surprised. I smiled. They're going to be devastated. Not because of what I've achieved, but because they'll finally realize what they've lost. Flashback, 3 months earlier. The AI division is crucial to our survival, Dad argued in the executive meeting I wasn't supposed to know about. We need to expand it. Agreed, Mom replied. But Sarah's not the one to lead that expansion. We need someone with real executive experience. Jessica, ever helpful, chimed in. I know some great candidates from my Harvard network. Real leaders, not just programmers. They never checked who actually owned the technology they were discussing. Never questioned why their star programmer worked such long hours, had so many workshops to attend, took so many mysterious calls. Their assumption that I was just a glorified coder had made everything so much easier. Present day. Back at my soon-to-be former office, I packed the last of my personal items. Rachel helped, barely containing her excitement. Your new office is amazing, she gushed. All glass and chrome with a view of the entire city. And wait until you see your executive bathroom. Did you pack the special items for tomorrow? I asked. She patted a sleek briefcase. All here. Your new business cards, the press release copies, and the official announcement papers. Oh, and that photo you wanted. I pulled out the frame, a family picture from last year's company picnic. Mom and Dad flanking Jessica, their pride evident in every smile. Me relegated to the edge of the frame, almost an afterthought. Tomorrow that dynamic would change forever. My phone buzzed with messages from my family. Mom, don't forget the conference tomorrow. Try to dress professionally for once. Dad, stay with your tech team during the conference. Executive section is reserved for senior leadership. Jessica, saved you a seat in the back with the IT crowd. Winking face. I replied to none of them, instead sending a message to Marcus. Everything ready for tomorrow? His response was immediate. Stage is set. Photographers placed. Your family's front row seats are confirmed. It's going to be quite a show. Rachel handed me my coat. Your car's waiting. New apartment all set up too. The penthouse view is incredible. Another detail my family had missed. My modest salary had been supplemented by licensing fees from my patents for years. The parking lot Toyota they mocked? A convenient prop. The small apartment they pitted? A temporary address while my penthouse was being renovated. See you tomorrow, Rachel. Wear something nice. It's going to be a memorable day. As I left Global Tech's offices for the last time, I passed the executive conference room. Through the glass, I could see my family in another late meeting, probably planning tomorrow's conference appearance. Mom in her power suit, Dad with his important papers, Jessica commanding attention. They looked so confident, so secure in their positions. In less than 24 hours, that confidence would shatter like the glass ceiling they never thought I'd break. The Tech Leadership Summit's main hall buzzed with anticipation. 2,000 industry leaders filled the auditorium, with millions more watching the live stream globally. In the front row, my family sat proudly, Mom checking her BlackBerry, Dad reviewing his notes, Jessica networking with nearby executives. I watched from backstage, adjusting my Chanel suit, a far cry from the practical office where they'd always encouraged me to stick to. Rachel stood nearby, practically vibrating with excitement. 5 minutes until the announcement, she whispered. The press is all in position. Social media teams ready. Your family has no idea you're not in the back with the tech teams. Marcus appeared, grinning. Ready to make history? Ready to correct it, I replied. They've been writing my story wrong for years. Time for a new chapter. The conference host approached the podium, tapping the microphone. Welcome to the 2025 Tech Leadership Summit. Before we begin our scheduled presentations, we have a special announcement from Victoria Corporation's CEO, Marcus Chen. I watched my family lean forward. Victoria Corp was the industry giant. Everyone knew they'd been planning something big. Marcus took the stage. Good morning. For the past year, Victoria Corp has been developing a revolutionary integration strategy. Today we're announcing not just a new direction for our company, but new leadership to take us there. Mom nudged Jessica excitedly. They probably thought this was Jessica's moment. She'd been not so subtly hinting about being headhunted by major companies. The future of tech isn't in traditional management, Marcus continued. It's in understanding the intersection of innovation and implementation. That's why I'm proud to announce Victoria Corp's new Advanced Technologies division, encompassing our AI, machine learning, and digital transformation sectors. Dad was already writing notes, probably planning how global tech could compete. If he'd only known that their ability to compete was about to walk out the door, literally. This division will control over 60% of the market share, making it the largest technology integration unit in the industry. Its success relies on proprietary AI systems that have been quietly revolutionizing the sector for years. I stepped closer to the stage entrance, watching my family's proud expressions. They thought they were witnessing industry history. They had no idea they were about to become part of it. These systems, currently being used by major companies including global tech industries, were developed by one visionary leader. Someone who understood that true innovation doesn't always wear a power suit or command a boardroom, at least not until today. Mom's BlackBerry lowered slowly. Jessica stopped networking. Dad's pen froze mid-note. Please welcome the new CEO of Victoria Corp's Advanced Technologies Division, and the youngest division chief in our company's history, Sarah Chen. The spotlight hit me as I walked onto the stage. The audience erupted in applause, but I focused only on the front row where my family sat in stunned silence. Mom's BlackBerry slipped from her fingers. Dad choked on his water. Jessica's perfectly maintained smile cracked like cheap veneer. Thank you, Marcus. I took the podium, my voice carrying clearly through the hall. As my first official act as division CEO, I'm announcing the acquisition of Global Tech's AI division, which consists of my team and my personally owned patents, currently licensed to Global Tech Industries. The screens behind me filled with financial projections, ownership documents, and patent registrations, all bearing my name. These technologies, which have been responsible for 70% of Global Tech's growth over the past 3 years, will now be exclusively available through Victoria Corp's new division. Camera flashes exploded as photographers captured the moment. In the front row, Dad was frantically flipping through his papers, probably searching for contracts he'd never bothered to read carefully. Mom had gone pale, likely remembering every dismissive comment about my computer games. Jessica's network of executives had suddenly found other places to look. Additionally, I continued, enjoying every second. I'm pleased to announce our division's first major initiative, a complete overhaul of corporate technology integration, replacing outdated systems and methodologies with our AI-driven solutions. The implications weren't lost on anyone. Global Tech's entire business model had just become obsolete. For those companies still using last decade's technology, or even BlackBerries in 2025, I added, watching Mom quickly hide her outdated device, our team is prepared to help you enter the modern era. Assuming, of course, you have the right leadership in place. The audience laughed. They got the joke. In the front row, my family decidedly didn't. I'll be taking questions after the break, I concluded. Though first, I should acknowledge some people who made this possible through their unique form of motivation. I turned to the front row where my family sat frozen in their expensive chairs. Mom, Dad, Jessica. Thank you for teaching me that leadership isn't just about presence or authority. Sometimes it's about quietly building something so revolutionary that the old way of doing business becomes irrelevant. I couldn't have done this without your constant reminders of what I supposedly couldn't do. The audience applauded again, many hiding smiles. Nothing entertains successful people quite like watching the mighty fall. Rachel appeared at my side with a folder. Your family's secretary is asking if you still want to attend their executive lunch today. I smiled, watching Mom frantically whisper to Dad while Jessica typed on her phone, probably updating her LinkedIn profile. Tell them I have a prior commitment, I replied. I need to finish setting up my new office. The one with the view they always said I'd never have. The irony wasn't lost on anyone when Global Tech's stock dropped 30% by day's end. My parents' carefully built empire crumbled not because of external competition, but because they'd underestimated the quiet daughter who wasn't leadership material. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself so right that their opinions become irrelevant footnotes in your legacy. And sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served from a corner office they said you'd never occupy. Get out. You're a disappointment to this family. Dad's voice boomed through our family home, rattling the photographs on the walls. Smiling faces of successful siblings and cousins, their achievements meticulously documented while my own story remained conspicuously absent. I stood in the doorway of my childhood home, a light drizzle falling on an unseasonably cold October evening. Mom sat at the dining table, dabbing her eyes with an embroidered napkin, while my father's face had reached that particular shade of purple reserved for his greatest moments of outrage. The catalyst for this final explosion? I just declined for the third time their attempts to get me a proper job at Global Dynamics, the tech corporation where they both worked as middle management. The position they'd arranged, through connections and favors, was a junior analyst role, several steps below my actual qualifications. They only knew. 28 years old, living in that tiny apartment, doing God knows what with your time. Dad continued, his tie askew from the force of his gesticulation. Your sister's a senior VP, your brother's making partner at his firm, and you're just a disappointment? I supplied calmly, adjusting my unremarkable off-the-rack suit. Failure. Please, Dad, don't hold back now. Mom's sob grew louder. We just want what's best for you, David. This phase of yours, whatever you're doing. What I was doing. I almost laughed. While they'd been lamenting my apparent lack of direction, I'd been orchestrating one of the largest silent acquisitions in corporate history. Summit Enterprises, my private investment firm, had spent the last 3 years quietly accumulating shares in Global Dynamics through a labyrinth of shell companies and private holdings. Yesterday we'd crossed the threshold. Summit now owned 51% of Global Dynamics shares. The board meeting scheduled for tomorrow would announce the new ownership structure and the complete reorganization of the company's leadership. But my parents didn't know that. They didn't know that their mysterious new CEO, brought in 6 months ago by the board, was actually my choice. They didn't know that their recent promotions, the ones they'd been so proud of, were part of my strategy to position them exactly where they needed to be for tomorrow's announcement. I've arranged another interview at Global, Dad was saying, his voice dropping into that condescending tone I'd grown to despise. Jim in HR owes me a favor. Just wear a proper suit this time, something that doesn't look like it came from a department store. I glanced down at my cheap suit, a bespoke Tom Ford that cost more than his car, deliberately chosen to look unremarkable. Everything about my appearance had been carefully crafted to maintain my cover. The modest apartment, one of 50 properties I owned in the city, the used Toyota, sitting next to my collection of supercars in a private garage, the basic smartphone while my real phone managed a billion-dollar empire. That won't be necessary, I said quietly. I actually have a meeting at Global Dynamics tomorrow morning. Dad's eyes lit up with desperate hope. You're finally seeing sense? The interview. Not an interview, I corrected him. A board meeting. Board. Mom's confusion was evident. But that's impossible. Tomorrow's meeting is closed. Only senior executives and major shareholders. Exactly. I turned toward the door, pausing just long enough to savor their bewildered expressions. Oh, and Dad? About that proper suit comment. This one cost more than your annual salary. I just didn't want to make you uncomfortable. The door closed on their stunned faces. Through the window, I could see them frozen in their familiar poses. Dad standing with his mouth open, Mom clutching her napkin, both trying to process words that didn't fit their carefully constructed narrative of their failure son. My phone buzzed as I got into my waiting car. Not the Toyota, but the Bentley I reserved for special occasions. Tomorrow would certainly qualify. Everything's ready for tomorrow, Maisio texted. The legal team has finalized the restructuring documents. Should I assume your parents don't know yet? They will tomorrow, I replied, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. How's the mood at the office? Your parents spent all day bragging about how they're trying to help their struggling son get an entry-level position. The irony is delicious. I smiled, remembering every family dinner spent listening to their disappointed sighs, every holiday enduring comparisons to more successful relatives, every conversation that ended with thinly veiled suggestions about getting a real job. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow they would learn that their son didn't need their help getting a job at Global Dynamics, because he owned it. The next morning, Global Dynamics headquarters buzzed with nervous energy. Employees whispered about the emergency board meeting, about rumors of major changes coming. My parents, unaware they were about to become characters in their own cautionary tale, strode through the lobby with their usual air of middle management importance. I watched from the executive elevator, the one they'd never been allowed to use, as they made their way to the regular staff entrance. Mom was wearing her power suit, the one she reserved for important occasions. Dad had on his lucky tie, probably hoping to catch the eye of someone important during the day's events. If only they knew just how important. They're all here, Maisio Sarachin murmured beside me. Full board, major shareholders, executive team. And of course your parents, though they're not supposed to be in the main meeting. Oh, they'll be there, I said, straightening my actual power suit, a bespoke brioni that cost more than their combined annual salaries. Make sure they're called in right as we start. The executive floor was a study in controlled chaos. Board members and executives hurried around, clutching folders and whispering urgently. None of them knew the full story yet. Only that Summit Enterprises had acquired a controlling interest, and that the mysterious chairman would be revealing himself today. I stepped into my private office, hidden behind the boardroom. Through one-way glass I could see the room filling up. My parents were being ushered in, looking confused but pleased at their unexpected inclusion in such a high-level meeting. Look at them, Emma, my younger sister, said from the doorway. Unlike our parents, she'd known about my success from the beginning. Mom's already planning how to brag about this at her next book club meeting. Not quite the story she's expecting to tell, I smiled, checking my watch. Ready for the show? Emma's grin was wickedly delighted. I've been ready for 5 years. The boardroom settled as Sarachin took her place at the head of the table. My parents sat near the back, trying to look like they belonged. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, as you know, Summit Enterprises has acquired a controlling interest in Global Dynamics. Today you'll meet Summit's chairman and learn about our new direction. Dad leaned over to Mom, whispering something that probably included the words hostile takeover and corporate raiders. They'd always feared change, always clung to their outdated ideas of corporate success. Before we begin, Sarah continued, I want to acknowledge some of our long-term employees who have been crucial to Global Dynamics operations. Richard and Patricia Moore, please stand. My parents rose, beaming with pride. Dad straightened his lucky tie. The Moores have been with us for 25 years, Sarah said. They've recently expressed concerns about their son's career choices, even trying to secure him an entry-level position here. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Mom's smile faltered slightly. What makes this particularly interesting, Sarah continued, her voice taking on an edge of amused irony, is that their son is actually... The private office door opened. I stepped into the boardroom. Our new chairman, I finished for her. The silence was absolute. Dad's lucky tie seemed to be choking him. Mom's power suit suddenly looked like a child's costume. Hello, Mom, Dad, I said, walking to the head of the table. Please keep standing. We have a lot to discuss about my career choices. Their faces had passed white and moved into a sort of grayish green. Around them, board members and executives were beginning to understand the delicious drama unfolding before them. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I continued, Summit Enterprises owns 51% of Global Dynamics shares. We'll be implementing comprehensive changes to modernize operations, streamline management, and bring this company into the current century. I opened the folder in front of me, enjoying the way Dad's eyes followed my movements like a man watching a cobra dance. Now, about that entry-level position you were so keen on arranging. The board packet in front of you outlines our restructuring plan, I continued, watching my parents slowly sink back into their chairs. You'll notice significant changes to the management structure, particularly in outdated middle management positions that have, shall we say, resisted innovation. Dad's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Mom hadn't moved since I entered, her perfectly maintained facade cracking like old paint. But before we discuss the company's future, I said, leaning forward, let's talk about last night's family dinner. I believe you called me a disappointment? Told me to get a real job? The boardroom was silent except for Emma's poorly concealed snort of laughter. Every eye darted between me and my parents, drinking in the corporate theater playing out before them. David, Mom finally managed, her voice barely a whisper, we didn't know. Clearly, I cut her off. You didn't know that while you were lamenting my tiny apartment, I was living in the penthouse of a building I own. You didn't know that while you mocked my used Toyota, I was building one of the largest private investment firms in the country. You didn't know that every time you compared me to my successful cousins, I was closing deals bigger than their entire companies. Dad found his voice, though it cracked like old glass. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like when I tried to explain my first venture capital fund, and you interrupted to brag about cousin James making junior partner. Or when I attempted to discuss my investment strategy, and Mom changed the subject to Sandra's new position at that failing startup. I pulled up the company's financial projections on the wall screen. Speaking of failing, let's discuss Global Dynamics' performance under your generation's leadership. Market share down 30%. Innovation stagnant. Stock price artificially maintained by my quiet acquisition of shares. Now see here, Dad started, a flash of his old authority emerging. You can't just. Can't what, Dad? Succeed beyond your narrow definition of success? Build something bigger than your limited imagination could grasp? Or do you mean I can't fire you? Because actually I can do all of those things. Sarah Chin slid 2 envelopes across the table. Your retirement packages, she explained professionally. Quite generous, considering the company's performance under your supervision. Mom's hands shook as she reached for the envelope. But our positions, our standing in the company, were maintained solely because I wanted you exactly where you are for this moment, I finished. Every promotion you've received in the past year, every lucky break. All orchestrated to keep you comfortable until today. The reality of their situation seemed to finally hit them. Every dismissive comment, every condescending piece of advice, every missed opportunity to simply listen to their son, it all led to this moment. The severance is $5 million each, I added, watching their eyes widen. Consider it hazard pay for enduring decades of outdated management philosophy. Your country club membership will be maintained. Your social status, such as it is, won't suffer. Though I imagine the story of how your disappointment, son, turned out will make for interesting conversation at your next garden party, Mom. Emma stepped forward, placing a final document on the table. And this is the deed to your house, now owned by Summit Enterprises. Don't worry, you can keep living there. Consider it rent-free accommodation from your struggling son. The board members were doing poor jobs of hiding their smirks. Several were already updating their LinkedIn profiles, recognizing which way the corporate winds were blowing. One more thing, I said, standing to signal the end of this particular family drama. About that entry-level position you were so eager to arrange? The salary would have been roughly what I make in interest every hour. But thank you for your concern about my career prospects. I buttoned my jacket, every inch the chairman they never thought I could be. The press conference announcing the changes will be in an hour. You're welcome to stay and watch, or you can take the rest of the day to process your new reality. Either way, your key cards will stop working at 5 p.m. Walking toward the door, I paused for one final twist of the knife. Oh, and about Sunday dinner this week? I'm afraid I'll have to cancel. I have a company to run. A real job, as you might say. The boardroom door closed on their stunned faces, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of their assumptions, surrounded by the evidence of their greatest parental failure, which had somehow become their son's greatest success. My phone buzzed with a message from Emma, worth every second of waiting. Though I think Mom's going to need a new power suit, this one seems to have shrunk along with her ego. I smiled, stepping into my private elevator. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's succeeding so spectacularly that their opinions become irrelevant footnotes in your success story. The elevator doors closed on my past, opening onto my future. Above, my parents sat in a boardroom that no longer belonged to their world, finally understanding that their disappointment son had outgrown not just their expectations, but their entire definition of success. And somewhere in the city, a used Toyota sat in front of an unremarkable apartment, props in a play that had just reached its perfect final act. 1 year later, I sat in my office reviewing Global Dynamics' latest quarterly report. Our stock had doubled. Innovation was thriving. The old guard had been replaced with forward-thinking leaders who understood the modern business landscape. My parents, they'd adjusted somewhat. Mom now proudly tells her friends that she always knew I had potential. Dad occasionally asks for investment advice, though he still can't quite meet my eyes when we discuss business. Emma runs our West Coast operations, proving that at least one of us had followed the family business path, just not the way our parents expected. The photograph on my desk isn't the formal family portrait anymore. Instead, it's a news clipping from the day of the takeover, capturing the exact moment my parents realized their disappointment son had become their boss. Sometimes success isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about rewriting the entire story they thought they knew about you. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting them live with the knowledge that they never really knew you at all.